You know, as a linguist, I think some of the most fascinating puzzles out there are hidden in the tiny, common mistakes that language learners make. They're not just errors, they are incredible clues. And today, we're on the trail of a really interesting one. We're going to solve the case of the missing word. All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at the mystery itself. Then we'll hunt for clues in the speaker's native language. After that, we'll follow the data, we'll crack the case with a really cool linguistic theory, and then, finally, we'll talk about why this little puzzle is a big deal for anyone learning a language.
So, first things first in any good investigation, right? You have to identify what's actually happened. And in this situation, it's a linguistic crime scene, a very specific and very common missing word. Now, this isn't just some random slip-up. It happens so consistently that it creates a clear pattern. And for a linguist, let me tell you, patterns are like breadcrumbs that lead you right to the solution. Okay, check this out. This shows you the problem perfectly. On the left, you've got the correct Mandarin. That word hui or hui works kind of like the English word will. It tells you this is happening in the future. But look at the common error on the right. It's just gone. It vanishes. So our job is to figure out why. So what's really fascinating here is that the culprit isn't a lack of knowledge. It's almost an excess of it. The learner's own native language, Japanese, is interfering. It's like a linguistic ghost in the machine. And here is our first major clue. In Japanese, the simplest verb form, the one ending in ru, is like a Swiss Army knife. It can mean the present, it can mean a habit, and, this is the important part, it can also mean the future. All by itself. You don't need a separate word for will.
Now, of course, Japanese speakers can get more specific if they want to. If they want to say something like, he probably will come, to show they're making a guess, they can add a little marker at the end, like daro. And there's another marker, monoda, that they can use for habits. But here's the absolute key. These markers are often totally optional extras. That simple default verb form does most of the heavy lifting all on its own. Okay, so we have our prime suspect. The super powerful, do-it-all default verb from Japanese. Now, let's head to the lab and see if the evidence, the actual data from learners, backs up our theory. And wow, the evidence it's just overwhelming. The research shows that more than half, get this, almost 56%, of all the mistakes Japanese learners make with this word kai come from just leaving it out. This isn't just a small thing, it's the main story.
I mean, just look at the breakdown in this table. It's not even close. The biggest issue by a gigantic margin is underuse, just plain old omission. All the other kinds of errors, like using the wrong word or using it too much, they're tiny in comparison. The data is practically screaming at us. The word isn't being used incorrectly, it's just disappearing.
So this data trail leads us straight to this beautiful, really powerful idea in linguistics that explains everything. It's called the theory of markedness, and honestly, it is the key that unlocks this entire mystery.
It's a pretty simple idea, but it's profound. In language, you often have pairs of words where one is the simple, basic, default version. We call that one unmarked. The other one is more specific. It adds some extra piece of information, and we call that one marked. The lion versus lioness example is perfect, right? Lion is the default. Lioness adds that specific mark of being female. So here's how it all comes together. The Japanese ru verb is the simple, default, unmarked way to talk about the future. But the Mandarin word hui is more specific. It explicitly marks the future. So when a Japanese speaker is learning Mandarin, their brain automatically goes back to its default programming, the unmarked way, and it sees hui as an optional extra piece and just leaves it out. They're not being lazy, their brains are just being super efficient. So, case closed. The culprit was the unmarked verb, and markedness theory gave us the motive. But beyond solving this one little puzzle, what does this tell us about how all of our brains learn new languages? Well, this single case actually shows us some universal truths. Your first language is always there, kind of like an invisible filter, and your brain finds it way easier to stick with simple, unmarked rules than to learn new, more complex, marked ones. What this means is that a lot of common mistakes aren't random at all. They're totally predictable. And once you understand why you're making a mistake, you're already halfway to fixing it. And that's the bottom line, really. We're all shaped by the grammar we grow up with. Learning a new language isn't just about piling on new rules. It's about recognizing and sometimes fighting against the powerful, invisible habits of our mother tongue. Just being aware that the ghost is there is the key to making real progress. And that kind of leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about for ourselves, doesn't it? What subconscious habits from your native language might be influencing how you communicate right now? Thank you so much for joining me on this investigation.